Well, the big national story, a two-judge bench of the Supreme Court delivered a split verdict on the Karnataka government's order banning hijab in educational institutions. One judge upheld the ban, while the other called wearing hijab a matter of choice. The ball is now in the court of the Chief Justice of India, who's likely to refer the matter to a larger bench. In the interim, the ban on the hijab is likely to stay. Ashmit Kumar is here with the highlights of the court's order and its implications. Ashmit.
It was a little more than 8 months back that the schools and colleges in Karnataka made the national and international headlines, the reason being trying to enforce a ban on hijab. Now, after polarizing debates, fierce politicking and several hours of judiciary's time, we are no closer to an answer. Let's in fact trace the movements of this debate. On February 5th, the Karnataka government passed an order to ensure a more homogeneous environment. The order barred all clothing articles that disturb equality, integrity and public order. The language may have been innocent, but the intent was clearly to take aim at the hijab. Now, the government order sparked protests both for and against the ban. The issue was then taken up before the Karnataka High Court. The High Court affirmed the government ban on hijab and held that this is not an essential practice in Islam and need not be given any special consideration. Now, the issue then travelled to the Supreme Court. Muslim girls claimed before the top court of the country that their right to education and their right to freely practice their religion was being affected. The Supreme Court heard the case, marathon hearings across 10 days, and reserved its judgment on September 22nd. It was this judgment that was pronounced earlier today. Now here, important to bear in mind that the judgment was to be pronounced by a bench of two judges. That's Justice Hemant Gupta as well as Justice Sudhanshu Dhulia. Now, keeping this in mind, the Supreme Court has now given a split verdict. Both the judges have given a different view on the status of the hijab ban. While Justice Gupta has upheld the ban, Justice Dhulia has quashed the Karnataka government order. Now, Justice Hemant Gupta held in his judgment that, in his view, the plea by Muslim students deserves to be dismissed. He clarified in the judgment that the petitioners had failed to demonstrate how wearing a hijab was an essential practice in Islam. Moreover, he held that there was no violation of any fundamental rights. However, in stark opposition, Justice Dhulia held that the Karnataka government order as well as the Karnataka High Court order upholding the hijab ban both deserve to be quashed. He held that wearing hijab need not be an essential practice, but that it was supported by the right to life under Article 19 and the right to practice religion under Article 25. He cautioned that this was an issue of students' consent and that this was the foremost thing, and the foremost concern on the court's mind was education of students. In fact, he also noted that many students, especially in rural areas, have to attend to chores at home and travel long distances to schools, and that the effort of the court should be to make this process easier. So what happens now? Well, due to the split verdict, the issue has now been put before the Chief Justice of India, who's likely to assign the case to a larger bench, likely to have at least 3 judges to avoid this tie. As for the interim, lawyers that we spoke to tell us that until a clear order is passed staying the High Court order, the ban on wearing hijab will continue to be in effect. Meanwhile, given the stakes involved, that's an entire academic year for students, the petitioners are likely to move the CJI to constitute a new bench at the earliest.
Ashmit, many thanks for joining us. And before we wrap, Rajasthan's royal forts, palaces and silver sand dunes used to attract over 500 lakh tourists every year. The lockdown brought this thriving industry to a screeching halt, but things are now starting to look up. Santia reports that the desert state is hoping these green shoots will grow into a lush oasis once again.
Rajasthan has always been a big tourist destination. From Pink City Jaipur to Blue City Jodhpur to Golden City Jaisalmer, the state's rich heritage and colourful cultural attractions brought in over 500 lakh tourists every year, and tourism accounted for about 15% of the state's $150 billion economy. But the lockdown changed everything. These forts and palaces, which were a major tourist attraction, had to be shuttered. And as a result, the sector, which was the state's 3rd largest employment generator, ran out of gas. For Hemraj Malhotra, who has been working as a licensed guide at Jaipur's Amer Fort for over 6 years, the 2-year lockdown was a nightmare, one that didn't end when the lockdown was lifted.
देखो गुजारा तो देखो पहले तो जो थोड़ा बहुत बचा कुचा था उससे काम चला है, फिर बाद में इधर उधर से करके काम चला है क्योंकि टूरिस्ट बिल्कुल नहीं था। उसके बाद जब थोड़ा थोड़ा लॉकडाउन हटा तो मार्केट में आए तो कोई नहीं आता था। शुरुआती 1 साल में तो यहाँ बहुत कम टूरिस्ट होता था, इक्का दुक्का आसपास का देखने को मिलता था या लोकल कोई जयपुर के होते थे, तो उन्हीं से ज़बरदस्ती करके हाथ पाँव जोड़ के दिखाना पड़ता था।
Allied industries and businesses also suffered.
लॉकडाउन हटा तो उसके कुछ महीनों तक तो टूरिस्ट बिल्कुल ही आया ही नहीं, और अब धीरे धीरे लोग आ रहे हैं। ऐसा लग रहा है कि इस सीज़न में जो है बहुत ही अच्छा काम चलेगा और फिर से हमारा सबका बिजनेस बहुत ही अच्छा ग्रोथ करेगा।
At Nahargarh Fort, which lies 11 kilometers away, the story is much the same. The lockdown may have been lifted, but the pickup in tourism activity is still sluggish. And it's domestic tourists who are making up the bulk of the visitors.
जैसे लॉकडाउन खुला है उसके बाद में टूरिस्ट पॉइंट पे टूरिस्ट नज़र आया, तो एक समय ऐसा था कि टूरिस्ट बिल्कुल देखने को नज़र ही नहीं आता था।
2020 में तो सिर्फ इंडियनों के अलावा कुछ आती ही नहीं थी। 2021 में इंडियन ही आते थे, अब फॉरेनर आना अब शुरू आया 2022 में, तो बहुत ही ज़्यादा जनसंख्या कम आने लग गई, पहले से तो बहुत ज़्यादा कम है।
The pickup since this year's tourist season began in July-August has given these people hope. Experts say 2022 is now on track to bring some much-needed relief to the sector and the state, especially if the peak season of October to March sees an upswing in arrivals.
थोड़ा सीजन अब चल रहा है, जैसे धीरे धीरे जैसे सर्दी आएगी लोग इतना ही ज़्यादा आएंगे, और ये जैसे कोरोना चला गया उसको देखते साथ भी पब्लिक निकलने लगी है।
And that's music to many ears. The tourist season has begun. October to March is the best time to visit Rajasthan. This year's tourist season will determine whether the state has recovered from the lull caused by the pandemic. The government is confident that the state's tourism will bounce back to pre-COVID levels. People associated with the sector also claim that they have used the lockdown time for renovation and maintenance so that once things open up, they can attract more tourists than ever. In Jaipur, Rajasthan, with camera person Milind Wagmare, this is Santia for CNBC TV 18.
Well, that's it then on this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned. The news continues here on CNBC TV 18.